When I walked into my childhood home on Maple Street that afternoon, I expected the scent of fresh coffee, maybe a warm hug. Instead, I heard my name, whispered like a shameful secret. I'd come unannounced, juggling grocery bags, planning to surprise my parents with their favorite mushroom lasagna, the one Mom used to make when I was a kid. I hadn't even stepped fully into the house when I froze. Their voices floated from the living room. "I don't know how much longer we can keep pretending," my dad muttered. His voice was unusually low, almost resentful. "Ellie is a complete disappointment. She may pay the bills, but that doesn't make up for everything else she's failed at." My breath caught in my throat. I nearly dropped the groceries. Then my mother replied, as calmly as if she were commenting on the weather. "At least her money keeps us comfortable. She owes us, Harold. After all we've done for her. It's the least she can do." The blood drained from my face. I stood in the narrow hallway, staring at the wall, hoping maybe I had misunderstood. But their words weren't vague. They weren't confused. They were brutally, unmistakably clear. For 5 years, I'd supported them, quietly. Their mortgage, utilities, even their trips to Arizona every spring. After Dad's construction business folded and Mom claimed early retirement for her health, I stepped up. I was 27 and juggling overtime as a project manager at a mid-sized tech company in Chicago. I skipped vacations, delayed replacing my old car, and lived on rice and coupons so they wouldn't have to worry. And still, this is what they thought of me. I backed out the front door slowly, careful not to make a sound. The bags were still in my trunk, forgotten. I drove home in silence, their words replaying like a loop I couldn't turn off. Complete disappointment. She owes us. That night, I sat cross-legged on my apartment floor, staring at the financial spreadsheet I'd updated weekly for years. Every expense meticulously logged, their internet bill, their lawn care service, their insurance premiums. I'd always felt pride in my responsibility, like I was doing something meaningful. Now I just felt used. The next morning at work, my fingers hovered over my keyboard, barely typing. I went through the motions, meetings, emails, but my mind was still stuck in that hallway, hearing my mother's voice say she owes us like it was some universal truth. By the end of the day, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I needed to know if I had heard wrong. If there was some explanation, some misunderstanding. I called them. My dad answered on the second ring. "Ellie, sweetheart," he said, voice warm, casual. I swallowed hard. "Dad. I was at the house yesterday." A pause. "I heard what you said. Both of you." The silence stretched. Then, without warning, my mother took the phone. She laughed, not nervously, but like I'd said something amusing. "Well," she said crisply. "It's true, isn't it? You've never really lived up to what we hoped. You do owe us. After everything we sacrificed. Come on, Ellie." I didn't say another word. I just set the phone down, placed it gently on the table, and stared out the window. The wind rustled the branches of the oak outside, the same tree I used to climb as a kid. Something shifted inside me then. Years of guilt, of silent loyalty, began to dissolve. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was done. The days that followed felt like moving underwater. I replied to work emails, joined meetings, went grocery shopping. But none of it felt real. My thoughts circled the same phrases. "You've never lived up to what we hoped. You owe us." I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through old texts, reread birthday cards with backhanded compliments, replayed past conversations. It wasn't just this one incident. The signs had always been there. The subtle digs. The expectations. I had brushed them off for years, telling myself that's just how they are. But now I saw it for what it was, manipulation disguised as obligation. By Friday night, I had made a decision. I opened my banking app and canceled every automatic payment tied to their lives. Mortgage. Internet. Cell phone plan. Credit cards. Each cancellation triggered a confirmation email. Each email felt like a small breath of freedom. That night, I called my best friend, Marissa. She had warned me for years. But she didn't say "I told you so." She just said, "Ellie, you don't have to keep setting yourself on fire to keep them warm." I cried, really cried, for the first time in years. The next morning, I got a text from Mom. "Sweetheart, it looks like some of the bills didn't go through this month. Did something happen with your bank? Call us." No apology. No acknowledgement. Just business as usual. Later, a message from Dad. "Hey honey, your mom's a little worried. Some payments are missing. Can you check? Hope everything's okay." Still, nothing about what they said. I didn't reply. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the compulsion to explain or fix. I let the silence do the talking. And it was louder than anything I could have said. By the end of the first week, the silence had become its own kind of sound, a steady, unrelenting echo of freedom. I didn't reply to any messages. Not my mom's mildly concerned texts. Not my dad's polite reminders. Not even the voicemail from my aunt asking if I was okay. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for them to apologize. I had accepted the truth, they weren't sorry. They were just inconvenienced. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. Nothing. No errands, no budget spreadsheets, no calls to utility companies on their behalf. I slept in. I went to the park. I brought a book I had started a year ago and never finished. For the first few hours, I felt like I was forgetting something. But by late afternoon, I started to feel something else. Peace. Of course, the silence on my end didn't stop the messages on theirs. By Tuesday, the tone had shifted. "Mom, text, Ellie, the mortgage hasn't been paid. Did something happen? We're getting late notices." "Dad, voicemail, we know you're busy, but please don't let this get out of hand. We're just confused. Call us." Confused. Like they hadn't sat in the very house I paid for and torn me apart behind closed doors. I didn't respond. On Thursday, I got a group text from both of them. A bold move. "Ellie, we're really worried. We know there was a misunderstanding. But this is serious. The bank is calling." Still, no apology. No recognition of what they'd said. Just worry about money. That night, I called Marissa. "They're starting to panic," I told her, voice flat. "They should," she said calmly. "You've been their safety net for 5 years. Now they're seeing the ground." I leaned against my kitchen counter, letting the silence fill the space. "I always thought I'd feel guilty." "Do you?" I paused. "No. Not really." The next morning, I received an email from my dad. He never used email. Subject line, urgent. "Please respond." It read like a letter, like he was trying to sound composed. "Ellie, we love you. We just don't want this to ruin our relationship. Please don't let one bad day undo everything. You've always been the strong one. Let's talk this out." I stared at it for a long time. The phrasing hit me. "You've always been the strong one." Translation: "You've always been the one who fixes everything, don't stop now." But I had stopped. That weekend, I ignored 5 missed calls, 4 texts, and a voicemail that started sweet and ended with my mother saying, "You're being very childish." The following Monday, I got another message. "Mom, text, we didn't mean it. Call us." It was short. Vague. Weak. I stared at the words "we didn't mean it" for a long time. Did they think that would undo what they said? As if I could forget hearing my father say I was a disappointment. As if my mother words, "she owes us," could be erased by 5 syllables. They weren't sorry. They were scared. And honestly, that felt fair. By the end of the second week, their tone had turned desperate. My mother sent a voicemail with her voice trembling. "Ellie, please. We're worried sick. You can't just throw away your family over one silly conversation. You know how your father gets when he's frustrated. It wasn't about you. But it was. It always had been." And now they were finally seeing what life without me really looked like. On Friday, I went to Marissa's place. We sat on her balcony with tea and soft jazz playing in the background. I don't know what I'm feeling, I admitted. It's like I'm grieving someone who's still alive. Marissa nodded. You are. You're grieving the parents you thought you had. The ones you kept hoping would show up. I blinked back tears. They said those things like it wasn't the first time. Like they've always talked about me that way. They probably have, she said gently. You just finally heard it. I nodded. I think I always knew. I just didn't want it to be true. Later that night, I lay awake scrolling through old photos on my phone. Christmas dinners. Birthday lunches. Smiles that now felt forced. I looked for signs, moments where maybe they did care, where I could prove myself wrong. But all I saw were patterns I hadn't wanted to see before. Conditional love. Praise only when I gave them something. Affection that lasted just long enough to get what they needed. The next morning, I got another voicemail from Dad. He sounded strained. Ellie, this is getting ridiculous. You're being stubborn. We're under a lot of pressure. You need to grow up and stop punishing us for one mistake. I laughed. Out loud. Alone in my apartment. That's what it was to them, punishment. Not boundaries. Not self-protection. Just rebellion. Later that afternoon, another voicemail. My mother again, voice sharp. We raised you better than this. This behavior? It's cruel. We didn't mean what we said. You know how your father is. I was just joking. You're being overly sensitive. Sensitive. The word slapped harder than anything else. It was their favorite weapon. Every time I expressed pain or drew a line, it became my fault. I was too emotional. Too dramatic. Too much. But this time, I wasn't being sensitive. I was done. By the start of the third week, the silence had shifted. It was no longer a space I had to defend, it was a boundary I owned. And they were unraveling. The messages came faster now. Longer. More desperate. The calm, calculated guilt had turned into chaos. I'd wake up to voicemails and go to bed with email subject lines in all caps. Every day, another variation of the same plea. Ellie, please. Just talk to us. The mortgage is overdue. The bank is threatening foreclosure. I didn't respond. Because I had already responded. Just not in the way they were used to. I had withdrawn the one thing they truly cared about, my support. And for the first time, they were facing the life they had refused to manage. That Monday, a text from Dad hit differently. Ellie, the bank has started foreclosure proceedings. You can't let this happen. We're your parents. It didn't make me flinch. Not anymore. They weren't sorry for what they said. They were sorry the consequences had arrived. Later that day, I received a message from an unknown number. Hi Ellie, it's Aunt Cheryl. Your mom is a mess. She cries all the time. Please call her. Family sticks together. That phrase, family sticks together, had been used to excuse every manipulation, every unspoken expectation, every time I was guilted into paying bills or changing plans. But family doesn't mean enabling. Family doesn't mean being emotionally blackmailed. And I wasn't going back. By Wednesday, the guilt campaign expanded. A cousin I hadn't heard from in years emailed me with the subject line, "They're your parents." She wrote about how some misunderstandings don't matter, how life is short, and how I'd regret this silence when it's too late. Regret. They wanted me to fear that word. But what I regretted was not seeing all of this sooner. That Friday night, I sat on Marissa's sofa, her living room bathed in warm lamplight and the smell of chai tea. I don't get it, I said, curling my knees up. They're the ones who said it. They called me pathetic. A failure. But somehow I'm the one who's supposed to feel bad. Marissa passed me my mug. Because they need you. And when people like that feel the power slipping away, they panic. They lash out. I feel like I'm watching them fall apart. And I'm just standing here. You are. But not because you pushed them. I nodded slowly. I just stopped holding them up. That night, I lay in bed replaying one of the first voicemails I saved. My mother's voice, sharp, frantic. "We raised you better than this. We didn't mean it. You're being too sensitive." It wasn't just gaslighting. It was rewriting history in real time. And I refused to co-author the lie. The next day, I got an email from my father. The subject line was short. "Final. You owe us." Inside was a list of everything they claimed they had given me: food, shelter, rides to soccer practice. He even mentioned my college tuition, which I had paid myself, by working part-time jobs and taking out loans after their checks bounced my junior year. "Remember who raised you," he ended the email. "Don't make us regret everything we did." I sat staring at the screen, stunned at the entitlement. I hadn't asked for anything back then. Not even an apology. I opened a folder on my desktop and pulled up my tuition records. Every receipt. Every payment. Every emergency scholarship I applied for when their support disappeared. They hadn't paid for me. They had simply taken credit for surviving my success. That Sunday, Marissa and I went for brunch. The sunlight was warm, the streets busy, the world moving forward. "You look lighter," she said, sipping her coffee. "I feel untethered," I replied. She smiled. "Good. You're finally breathing." That evening, as if on cue, another voicemail came through. My mother again. This time, her voice cracked between sobs and sharpness. "Is this what you want, Ellie? For us to lose everything? The house, the cars? For your parents to be homeless? You're pathetic, just like we always said." There it was. The truth again, but this time without the mask. She didn't miss me. She missed the money. I saved the voicemail. Not to punish them, but to remind myself. That pain has a pattern. And I was done stepping into it. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer through a referral from Marissa. We discussed what to do if my parents escalated, if they tried to sabotage my work, show up at my apartment, or smear me online. "I'm not trying to fight them," I told her. "I just want peace." "You're doing the right thing," the lawyer said. "Protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's survival." 2 days later, I received another message from Dad. "Please. We were stressed. We didn't mean any of it. Just help us this one last time. One last time." But I knew that phrase was a lie. There's always a next time with people like them. And I was done living in the loop. The foreclosure notice came on a Thursday. Not a phone call, not a knock on the door, just a quiet email from the bank. Subject line: "Final notice, property at risk." I opened it slowly, though I already knew what it would say. The house I had been keeping afloat for years was now officially sinking. And I wasn't going to stop it. I stared at the notification, the date of auction clearly marked in red. 30 days. That was how long they had before the house would be gone. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt still. Later that evening, I forwarded the email to Marissa. She replied immediately. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I typed. "More okay than I've been in a long time." The next day, I met her for coffee. As we sat by the window, she pulled a manila folder from her tote bag and slid it across the table. "I spoke to a lawyer, like you asked. Everything's ready: restraining orders, cease and desists, workplace protections. Just in case." I placed my hand over hers. "Thank you." Marissa gave a small, relieved smile. "I can tell you're still carrying something. Not guilt, maybe. But something." I nodded. "Grief. Not for what I lost, but for what never was." She squeezed my hand. "That's valid." That weekend, I went through my storage closet and found a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were photo albums, birthday cards, notes scribbled in my childhood handwriting. I sat on the floor of my apartment, sifting through the pieces of a life that once felt safe. I didn't cry. Instead, I carefully boxed them again, this time for donation. I didn't need relics of a reality I had outgrown. On Monday, I received a voicemail from my father. His voice cracked, distant, unfamiliar. "Ellie, please. We can't lose the house. Your mother. She's not well. Please don't do this. Just call us. We'll fix it. But I knew better. We'll fix it didn't mean change. It meant you fix it. Again. Like always. For the first time, I recognized the pattern for what it was, survival dressed up as love. I'd been the safety net for so long, they'd forgotten I was a person, not a system. And now, the system had shut down. Midweek, I received an email from HR at work. Someone, my mother, I suspected, had called the front desk asking to speak with me. They were turned away. Still, it was unsettling. I met with my supervisor and explained briefly, just enough to draw a boundary. She nodded. Whatever support you need, we've got your back. It felt strange to hear. But good. That Friday, a note appeared under my windshield wiper. Folded, handwritten, unmistakable. Ellie, don't do this. We can fix it. You're better than this. Mom. I threw it away without opening the car door. That night, I watched the sunset from my balcony, legs tucked under me, tea warm in my hands. For the first time in years, I didn't feel obligated to anyone. The house would go. They would face the consequences. And I would not be the one to rescue them. Marissa called. They're still trying to reach you. I know, I said. But I'm okay. You sound grounded. I am. The following week, the house went up for public auction. I didn't attend. But I saw the listing posted online: 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, large yard, motivated seller. That phrase made me laugh. Motivated by what? Panic? I didn't know who bought the house. I didn't care. What mattered was that for once, I wasn't the one holding it together. 2 days later, my mother showed up at my office. She was stopped at the front desk, but I saw her on the security cameras, hair disheveled, face frantic, voice raised. She was pleading with the receptionist to just let her talk to Ellie. Security escorted her out. I stayed in my office, the door shut, watching her search the lobby with wild eyes. Not for me, but for control. For someone who would give her the outcome she believed she deserved. She didn't find it. That night, I got a handwritten letter in my mailbox. There was no stamp, she had delivered it herself. Please, Ellie. We're your parents. We made mistakes, but this is cruel. You're better than this. We didn't mean it. But they did. And I had heard it all. 2 weeks later, I saw a post on a local housing group. A rental unit available, small, aging, not far from their old neighborhood. The name on the listing agent was familiar. So was the street. I didn't reach out. Because this wasn't about vengeance. It never had been. It was about freedom. My silence wasn't an attack, it was a refusal. A decision not to play a role I had never agreed to. And finally, the space they left behind was being filled with something far more valuable. Myself. The house sold on a rainy Thursday morning. I didn't attend the auction, but I watched the announcement online, a young couple holding keys, beaming in front of the house I grew up in. The house I saved more times than I could count. I didn't cry. I thought I would. I thought the finality of it would hit like a wave, that I'd feel guilt, or loss, or even the instinct to pick up the phone. But all I felt was stillness. That chapter had ended. Over the next few days, relatives started circling like clockwork. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years filled my inbox with accusations. How can you abandon your own parents? After everything they did for you? This is unforgivable. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because I finally understood their opinion didn't hold weight. They hadn't heard what I heard. They didn't know what it was like to stand in the hallway of your childhood home and hear yourself called a disappointment. A failure. An obligation. They didn't know what it was like to be loved only when convenient. But I did. And now I knew better. The real turning point wasn't the house being sold. It was the afternoon my mother showed up at my office again. I watched from the building's security monitor as she argued with the receptionist. Her hair was pulled back in a bun that was coming undone, her coat soaked at the sleeves. She looked frantic, exhausted, desperate. Security approached, and she resisted this time, waving a piece of paper in the air. The receptionist held firm. Eventually, she was led out, her voice echoing in the lobby, saying my name like a curse and a prayer all at once. Later that day, I found the same piece of paper taped to my car's windshield in the garage. "Ellie, please. We can fix this. Don't do this to your family. We need you." I peeled it off and folded it carefully, placing it in my glove compartment without reading it again. Then I sat behind the wheel, staring straight ahead for a long time. Not angry. Not numb. Just done. That evening, Marissa came over. She brought Chinese food and a bottle of wine. We sat on the floor of my living room, the lights low, a playlist humming quietly in the background. "Do you think they'll stop?" I asked. She shrugged. "Eventually. People run out of options when their manipulations stop working. I think I always thought they'd change, you know. That one day, I'd do something so good, they'd finally see me. Not the paycheck. Not the performance. Me." Marissa nodded. "But they never did." "No," I said. "They never did." Later that night, after she'd gone, I sat on my balcony wrapped in a blanket, watching the rain come down hard against the street. I thought about the version of myself from just a few months ago, the one who would have done anything to make her parents proud. She didn't exist anymore. In her place was someone steadier, quieter, but more whole. 3 weeks later, I moved to a new apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No ghost payments for someone else's mortgage, no secret strings attached to my generosity. Just a space that reflected the woman I was becoming. I bought a new sofa. Hung pictures I actually liked. Cooked meals for one without apology. The silence followed me here, but not as an absence. As peace. One day, while organizing a box of old mail, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. No return address. No postmark. Inside was a letter. "Ellie, we're sorry. We didn't mean what we said. We were scared. We didn't know how to ask for help without pushing you. Please don't forget us. Please come back." There were no names signed at the bottom. Just those words. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened. Because while I believed in forgiveness, I no longer confused it with access. Forgiveness, I had learned, didn't mean returning to the fire. Sometimes it simply meant choosing to heal in your own quiet way. Weeks passed. Then months. The messages stopped coming. The guilt faded like a bruise. And slowly, I began to reclaim the parts of myself I'd buried to keep others comfortable. I took a vacation. Alone. I read books without checking my phone. I got a promotion at work, and celebrated it without needing anyone's approval. One morning, I woke up and realized something astonishing. I didn't feel broken anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure. I had given it to myself. And I didn't just survive. I lived.